Good afternoon. We begin with the unfolding flood crisis.
Here in Lismore, the Wilsons River is now beyond 13 metres. No one's ever seen a flood of that extent.
What are you seeing as you duck under power lines? That's how high the water is?
It's hard to find somebody who hasn't been affected.
We're still suffering. Have a look outside and there's more water than I've ever seen before in my life. The trauma just keeps on going. It is going to happen again. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
With a once-in-a-100-year flood happening more often than every 100 years, is it time for Lismore to rebuild or relocate?
One in 100 years is really misleading. That suggests if you have one of those, you're right for another 99 years. So we need to use the correct terminology, which is in any given year, there's a 1% chance you'll get a flood at least that big.
When I look at the flood history, we've seen something like half a dozen floods above 13 metres in 150 years. That suggests that a 13-metre flood is, a 1 in 30-year chance. That's pretty frequent. And that doesn't mean they come every 30 years. That means that, you've got a 3% chance of a flood like that every single year. We might have a flood as big again next year. And simple structures like levee banks and dams is not going to protect us. The volume of water is just huge. Any of those mitigation options, I think, they help with minor floods. But when a 14.4 metre comes your way, the mitigation just doesn't work. It's not possible. The only way to avoid it happening again is to relocate infrastructure.
So I went and had a look at costs associated with building a new community, building a new town centre, what that might actually cost. At the end of the day, what I found was that it was going to be somewhere between 2 and 4 times the cost to society to continue to put the town centre of Lismore back than shifting it. Even if my numbers were out by 30% or 50%, over 20 years it was still a no-brainer. Shift the town centre. And the avoided costs completely overwhelm the costs of shifting it. These are large sums of money. Why are we spending them on something where this is going to happen again?
This place had never had a flood over the floorboards. When I left my son here at this house, I'm watching the flood heights online and on the phone and checking it as much as I can. And by the time they said it was going to be anything bigger than 12 metres, the levee had already overtopped. I said to my son, he said, I'll be right here one night. And I said, well, you'll be blocked off, it's definitely going to go over the levee, but, you should be all right. When he was here, we had my cat, Kimber, had to wake him up, literally jumped on his chest and smacked him in the face to wake him up. The water was already on the ground. When the water got up to his waist, he decided that he should probably get out. So he got out the window in my room, climbed onto the roof of the caravan that was floating and got onto the roof, where he waited for 3 or 4 hours to get picked up by a tinny. Thank God for the tinny heroes. And by the time he got to the evacuation centre, he had stage 2 hypothermia. He was freaked out, as I mentioned, he has Asperger's. And I was out of my mind. I couldn't get back here to get him out while I'm sitting up there safe. The most obvious answer is to shift the town. It's the simplest, the easiest, it will have the best long-lasting effects. All of that. To do anything else is just doing the same action, expecting a different result.
And so people need to make the noise. Write to their federal politicians and kick up a stink and say, no, this is not good enough. We want our town to have a future. And we don't want the people of Australia having to pay again and again and again and again and again for what happens to our town. We want to fix that now so we can stand on our own feet and we won't need government assistance in the future because we'll be a flood-proof community.
I think you just gave me the ending to the documentary right there. And why do you love Lismore?
The community. Since I got here, I felt like I was home. Nowhere has ever felt like home for me.
It's a community that's passionate about itself. People love Lismore. It's got tremendous history.
I feel put down roots here. It's where I want to stay.
Don't become a forgotten town.
Don't forget us. Send us help.
It's not too late to do better. It's not too late to create a good future for Lismore.